Drink beer, it's good for you. I'm empty-handed and I'm feeling blue, and I'm gonna drink till the day that I die.
Hi and welcome to the video. In this video I show you my Irish red ale, which I'm calling Luck of the Irish. So here's a quick look at the recipe. This is actually repeated in the YouTube description. As you can see by the grain bill on this recipe, this is going to have some very nice flavours. I'm also using that awesome Guinness yeast. As you can see by the packaging here, this was manufactured over a year ago, but my plan is to resurrect this on my stir plate. And here is that in action. So I set my Grainfather Connect to heat my strike water overnight so that it's ready for me in the morning, ready to dough in. So time to dough in now, and one thing I see an awful lot of, particularly on YouTube, is people pouring all of the grain in one go and then stirring from there. I would suggest that a far better method for the best results is to gradually add the grain and then stir it as you go. This is certainly a far more efficient way of doing things. So everything's fitted now, ready for the mash, and I've added my handy sink strainer just to filter that grain. So one question that has come up since the new controller has come along is, should I set the temperature to a bit higher than what I want to compensate for temperature loss in the first part of the mash? Personally, I say no. The reason I say no is because it really doesn't take very long at all for that temperature to equalize. I reckon you're talking about 4 minutes at the most. So you can see here that I'm basically 3 minutes into the mash now, and I'm almost at temperature, just 1 degree out, and that's really negligible. And for those that are wondering, you can actually pause the timer on any of the mash steps so that you can mash for longer. When you do this, you'll see the timer is paused. The unit will continue mashing. When you're happy to continue the mash with the timer, just simply press the resume button. Easy. So it's actually a pretty simple mash, this one. You mash in at 67 degrees C for 60 minutes and mash out at 76 for 10 minutes. Told you it was easy. And as you can see from the colour of the wort at this stage, we're definitely on track for a nice red ale. So while the mash is in progress, I've taken my yeast starter out and I've decanted it down. And I've also got my additions there, just some 60-minute hops and some Irish moss. And today's brewing music is brought to you by the timeless Pink Floyd. Without a fight. So with the mash now done, it's now time to start the sparge, and the key here really is take your time, do the sparge nice and evenly, and get a good coverage on that grain so that you can release those sugars. Quick shot of my sink strainer here, and as you can see, as usual, it's done a fine job at stopping that grain going back into the wort. So here we go, it's at the boil now, and through the app I've actually set my boil temperature to 99 because of my location, and that works very nicely for me. The thing to do now is to stir all of this protein, which is at the top, back into the actual wort. And at that point, once this is all clear, I'll then add the first hop. So now this is pretty clear, it's time to put my first and only hop into this beer and give it a good stir in. I also feel this is a good time to give the bottom a good scrape. And also the other thing that I'm doing gradually throughout the brew day whenever I get the chance is to give this yeast a bit of a mix up. One of the reasons for this is obviously that we want this to be at room temperature, but we also want a nice mix too. The other thing that you're going to want to manage throughout the boil is the protein deposits that sit at the top. Always give those a good stir in. So we're at 0 minutes now, and I'm going to give the beer a good stir. It's kind of hard with a beer of this volume to do a proper whirlpool. You're just kind of in an awkward position and so on, but I do my best. And I do this for about 5 minutes. and I'd recommend that everyone does this, particularly if you're brewing a beer that has a lot of hops. What this will do is it will put all of the hops in the middle of the brewing system and take the stress away from the pump. Had this been a particularly hoppy beer, then I would have used a drill. Once that whirlpooling is done, what I then do is I bring the system back up to the boil just for a couple of minutes and run it through this counterflow chiller. That's to sterilize it, and that's obviously important. So now the chilling process is in progress. It's time to get everything in place, and you can see that I've got my taps connected to the cold water, and I've also got my fermenter in place, and I've brought down my hanging gadget. So we're now at a temperature where we can pitch our yeast. That means I can get going and filling this fermentation vessel. But this is something that you need to manage, and the valve that you see here on the edge of the system is the key. If you find that your wort out is getting too hot, then you need to close that valve a little bit more. If you find it's getting too cool, then you open it more. For this particular yeast, I don't really want to go any lower than 18, and I don't want to go any higher than 25. The modifications that I've done to my Grainfather in terms of the wort out are purely to aerate the wort. These are essential steps for a healthy start to fermentation. You could of course invest in things like aeration stones, or even go as far as oxygen canisters. Personally, I've tried all of it and I don't see any difference, except for the obvious cost of buying such things. So this was a very successful brew day. All numbers were reached, though it's a little bit darker than I expected, but hopefully that'll line up. Having said that, as long as it tastes good, I don't really care. So I've connected my brewer's belt for heating and the temperature controller, and you can see the temperature there is a little bit low, but that will soon be made up by the system. So it's now time to give my Grainfather a clean, and something came up on the Grainfather users forum on Facebook that I thought was really great. So the idea is that instead of actually cleaning the counterflow chiller and also the mashing pipe separately, you can actually put them together like this, and then simply do one 15-minute cleaning cycle and one 15-minute water cycle. Much easier. So thank you very much for Frank Raymond on the Grainfather users forum on Facebook for sharing this. Simple, so obvious, and yet no one saw it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly had a lot of fun doing this. I'm really looking forward to this beer. This is one of the styles that I particularly enjoy. So if you did like this video, then please do go ahead and like it on YouTube. This really helps me out and allows the videos to be seen by a wider audience on YouTube. I've got a lot of videos in the pipeline for the future, so if you're interested in seeing what I've got coming up, then please subscribe for future content. If you have any questions on anything that I've covered in this video or in others, or anything to do with brewing in general, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. I'm more than happy to help. Until then, happy brewing!